Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back, everybody. Addiction is huge in our country and society, and pretty much getting worse every day. You look on every street corner, now there are smoke shops, CBD shops, THC. There's a place for that in healing and helping people, but that can also lead to deeper addictions of all different types. And we're talking with somebody today that helps people in many regards and their families as well. And we're going to pick up from where we left off last time in part 2 of our talk of addictions and healing. And he is an amazing psychotherapist. He's back with us. Dr. Barry Pilson is on the program. Hi, Barry. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me again.
Great to have you back here. And just an important topic to cover. I knew we wouldn't be able to do it in one show. So we're back here with part 2, but that's going to get us into recovery. What do you want to pick up from last time? Maybe review what we talked about?
Yeah, I was wanting to just to catch us up or make a smoother transition into the issue of recovery. Addiction has, there's a lot of ways to look at addiction, first of all, in terms of what you just said. You can look at it at a community level. You can look at it at a policy level. You can look at the whole issue of access. Certainly, with what's been going on over the last 10 or 20 years, even in terms of cannabis, gambling, there's much more access to addictive types of processes.
Sure. Now,
that can be confusing because just because there's access doesn't mean, that there's necessarily a connection between that and the rise of addiction. That gets a little bit confusing sometimes. However, what we're going to do is look at addiction more from a individual level in terms of how people, how certain processes impact the way we behave, the way we think, and our general brain functioning. So, last week, I went over the fact that what we're talking about with addiction are mood-altering substances or processes. Processes being what I said: shopping, gambling, other porn. Actually, it doesn't mean that if you look at porn you're addicted. It doesn't mean that if you smoke marijuana you're addicted. It doesn't mean if you have a drink that you're addicted. You can. There's ways of understanding and describing those kinds of behaviors. But anyway, that's what we tried to talk about last week. So the one of the salient points about addiction is that what happens in general, once we've moved into a process of addiction with a mood-altering substance or process, is that what we're doing is, in terms of our functioning, is we're hijacking the reward systems that our brain have developed in order to survive, in order to decide on how we're going to behave, in order to navigate our way through the world. If we weren't experiencing reward, if we weren't experiencing some kind of, and reward is not just pleasure. It's not this, what I like to say, Yahoo pleasure. Yahoo, I feel good, but pleasure also in satisfaction, in accomplishment, in achievement. Those are also pleasurable processes that make a difference in the quality of our life. So what happens is there's an intrinsic, again, reward system in our brains fueled by a neurotransmitter called dopamine, which most people have heard of, that directly reinforces, is what it does, certain behavior and processes. And with addiction, again, that system can get hijacked because with certain substances, with certain behaviors, we trigger a dopamine response. And that can really distort what we're seeking or what we're wanting. So one way to understand, again, to be a little hopefully clearer, is that addiction is, first of all, it distorts what we find rewarding. And secondly, it influences what we seek or what we want or our desires or our cravings. All right. And that's where it gets difficult. Uh, and a lot of times, what we want or what we feel like we want uh, can supersede our actual needs. So that's what again gets confusing and seems to lead people astray. When we talk about, oh, he'd rather have a drink than or gamble than take care of his business or his relationships or whatever. You see what we're saying. What we're saying is that his desires, his wants, or her desires or her wants are now distorted, and seeking a process that that we get habituated to. And again, that gets confusing. So that's kind of the background for addiction. Okay.
How does it change in the reward system where, let's say somebody does something, they achieve something, maybe something with work, something went well and they're happy. So,
Yeah.
not rewarded with, financially, but just I felt good. Wow, I did it.
Yes.
Look at me, pat myself on the back. Doesn't happen often, but I'm going to do it. How does it change from that into something else? Where's the transition into something else, be it a substance, be it an activity, whatever?
That's a really good question, and that's a very subtle point. Okay, is that as you're in your addictive process, as you're gambling and or using drugs or using alcohol in this kind of hijacked manner, what happens is other things that you might have gotten pleasure from, like achievement, all right, like some type of satisfaction in relationships. You actually start now experiencing a lack of pleasure when you interact with people, places, and things. So your work in and of itself that might have brought you a lot of joy or could have brought you some joy. It doesn't have to be a lot of joy, but some joy is now experienced as dull, as uninteresting. Okay. So that's the danger. So now you're seeking something else. You're seeking a quick dopamine kind of shot, so to speak, where you're feeling good at the moment. But basically what's happened is you're now being redirected unconsciously towards people, places, and things that are not bringing you the old pleasures that you might have brought. Okay. And so what we call that is there's sort of an anhedonia, which is hedonics means joy or pleasure. Anhedonia means lack of. So there's a lack of pleasure in life. There's a lack of joy. When you work with people that are in addiction, you'll see that. Wow. Even friends of yours or relatives, you can see sort of that lack of pleasure or joy, that kind of flatness to their affect, their flatness to their emotions, and in that context, often uninterested in things. They lose their interest. One of the beautiful things about being a human being is that we have this curiosity drive that really helps us navigate through the world. And when you lose your curiosity, you lose your interest, then life is dull. Okay, life is dull. And I can't think of anything worse than feeling, bored, dull, lack of pleasure. And that's exactly the system that gets hijacked.
What gets you? And maybe it'll be a deep conversation for another time. But what turns somebody in that direction where things just it's dull now? Like, and there's nothing exciting. Oh, look at that over there. Went out with friends and had a bunch of beers and shots and felt good. We had a great time. Let me do that again. Let me do that again, et cetera, et cetera. What gets you there?
Yeah, but you see that other interests now start to wane. Okay, the net, as maybe your work seems dull now. Maybe that the joy you had with that love interest doesn't seem as strong anymore. Maybe a subject that you were, maybe you're interested in art or music, or a whole host of things.
Sure.
And they just no longer have the same impact on you. And that's a deceiving kind of slow ongoing process. And for instance, if you didn't see somebody who was in an addictive process while they were in their addiction for a number of months, and you started to try to connect with them again, oftentimes you can feel their lack of interest or their lack of curiosity or their lack of involvement. Okay. And that's where it's so harmful, really, in terms of your own development and your own, and a big part of recovery is how do you access pleasure out of other things again? And here's the deal. That happens very slowly. That does not happen all at once. So if for instance, people will abstain from their drug or from their behavior, and in their abstinence, there's no real pleasure from anything else either. So they get bored, they get dulled, and that becomes painful, actually. And just because you might have engaged in something that you found pleasurable before, doesn't mean you're going to suddenly feel good again. Okay. Oh, I'm going to pick up the guitar and start playing that again, or whatever.
And life's going to be great.
Yeah, life's going to be great. And it doesn't work out that way. It doesn't. You don't suddenly experiencing joy again. That takes a long time. That's why, by the way, just to add to that, that's why there's a high relapse rate. People say, "Oh, I abstained," but then there's a high. People will like to say with addiction, the problem is that there's a high relapse rate. And what we tend to do is we tend to see that as a lack of willpower or a lack of interest or a weakness on that person's part. All right. But it's really not necessarily, it's not at all actually an issue of strength or weakness. It's actually the pain of the dullness and the lack of interest and the lack of motivation that comes with all of that.
Do you find,
and so that's the difficulty of recovery. But go ahead.
When you identified getting back to those things that bring you joy takes time. Playing guitar.
Yes.
Used to play guitar. It doesn't do anything for me. And then you get back into it and it's like, wow, this is great again. But it takes you time to get there. The time that it takes you to get there or back there, is that much shorter when you gravitate toward people, places, or substance, whatever it might be? You know what I'm saying? Like it when you get addicted to something, is it much faster than it is to get off of it and find joy in something else?
Yes. It's easy. So because you get that quick dopamine dynamic from the substance or the process, you see, then you're fooled essentially into, again, reinforcing your reward system. So it's harder to continue to do that. All right. So, and so let me add to that. Okay. That's in terms of recovery. Okay. It's a slow process, high rates of relapse. All right. Now, people who begin to abstain from their mood altering process or substance, often relapse within the first couple months. You have a high rate of relapse. Again, the myth of that is that they're weak or there's something wrong with them. There must be something else wrong with them. Here's the other side of that story. People who are in recovery or who abstain from their mood altering substance or change some of their behaviors, if you look at those people after 2 years, if 2 years of sustained behavior where they're abstinent and they're into new behaviors, if you look at those same people that have achieved 2 years of abstinence, let's just put it simply, you look at them 8 to 10 years later, 60% of them are still in abstinence a lot of times, okay? So the key is how do you get from 0 to 2 years, all right? Or how do you get from 0 to a year? That's what's hard. Wow. That's what's hard, all right? And a lot of recovery in that context, and this is where it's helpful too, that's not a psychotherapy process. That's eventually a community process. You need to be in a community of others, no matter whether it's a 12-step program, whether it's a church, whether it doesn't have to be religious either. whether it's any kind of group process that is reinforcing of you seeking pleasure in other ways, of not using a mood altering substance or not using a mood altering process. All right. And in that community, that membership in that community is what can motivate you to continue to do what you're doing. You see, and the beauty of the 12 steps is that they're so available, by the way, and they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere, and they're in all countries. So it's a readily accessible process. Except like all communities, it takes a long time sometimes to understand what the hell's going on when you're in it.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings me to what I was just about to ask you, is that are most or many addicted in denial that they really are, or do they know they are?
Well, they're not in denial. That denial is an interesting concept too. Denial is that you don't admit what you're doing, or you don't you can't see what's happening in your life. Well, you can see what's happening in your life, but the basic components of denial are that you rationalize what's going on. You sort of minimize it. I used to get a lot of joy out of, I'll say it again, playing the guitar, now I don't. Okay. Well, it's not such a hot thing anyway, and it doesn't matter that much to me. And besides that, my guitar broke, and it's too expensive to get a new one or whatever it is. So what we'll do with denial is not really that we don't admit what's happening. It's that we don't see what's happening and how it's impacting our lives. We don't, we tend to blame others, or we tend to minimize it, you see, which is actually what a treatment for addiction is about. It's really not about, I can go in there and change your brain and change your desires. It's really about addressing your sort of denial system. All right. Mm-hmm. How are you rationalizing? How are you minimizing? How are you blaming? And when a community of people are talking to you about their experiences and you're talking to them about your experiences, then you can see, feel, and behave a little bit differently, you see, because you got a mirror up to you. You have to have a mirror. That's the importance of community.
Wow. I heard an acronym lately for denial. And like to your point, somebody maybe just denying that playing guitar makes them feel great, or it used to. Now they're denying it because something else came along or they gravitated. The acronym is don't even notice I am lying. Don't even notice I am lying.
That's I haven't heard that. That's great.
Yeah.
Don't even notice I am lying, And it's really, and you, to go further with that even say I am lying, it's more, not only it's not that you're necessarily pathologically lying, okay, even though some people do that, pathologically meaning sort of deliberately and purposefully, mm-hmm. but that you're self-deceiving, you're deceiving others by self-deceiving, okay, so that because your motivation in terms of your brain dynamics is to continue to do what you were doing, because you're being highly reinforced to seek or to want the addictive object.
Wow.
So now I am lying, but I'm really lying to myself,
right,
as well as to others. Now,
I don't want to run out of time, but I want to.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, all good. Like we're going in different directions, and I love it. A lot of insight. We're talking about the recovery process. What are some of the things that we need to be mindful of?
Okay, so just to broaden that a little bit, like I said before, community is very important. You need to be with groups of people or
Sure.
communities where there's reinforcement for that kind of behavior. The understanding, though, is that also, to go back to your denial process, you have to accept that this is what's happening in your life, okay? So instead of just self-deceiving about it, you have to accept that. When I say you have to accept, hopefully you can connect the consequences to what's been happening in your life to that behavior. So it's a matter of connecting the behavior to the consequences, and that means you're accepting what's going on. Now, the beauty of acceptance is that opens you up to change. Okay, I accept that, my behavior here or my use of this substance is causing consequences that I really don't want. Okay. Okay. Then the natural question from that is what changes do I need to make? What changes do I really need to make? Do I need to just try to control my substance use, or do I need to abstain from my substance use? Okay. All right. That's a legitimate question. If you want to try to control your substance use, try it. Usually you'll find, and this is what we know really from people and from research, that if you try to moderate your substance use, for instance, and you're in an addictive process, usually you will end up going back to that same addictive process. So you probably need to abstain, but you're going to have to learn that. You have to learn that through trial and error a lot of times. Wow. So acceptance, hopefully, if you can connect, leads to change. Change, hopefully, will lead you on a path to where you are obtaining pleasure or joy or whatever you want to call it, some type of other satisfaction. We've talked a lot about, establishing goals and sort of glimmers of hope and glimmers of satisfaction, that's what leads to a difference. Okay. And that's where you get it's kind of like you're healing your dopamine reward system so that it's online in a more helpful way, which is what's the purpose of that? So that you can lead a more quality and, life that has some meaning and has some, that's the main thing, that has meaning to you.
What are some of the steps? And we always hear about a 12-step program. Does that exist?
Yeah. 12 steps. 12 steps are all, like I said, there's a lot of 12-step programs. The interesting question about that is, why are there so many? Why are they last? Why do they keep continuing? I mean, it's not a commercial enterprise. All right. It's basically there's nobody back there, funding 12-step programs.
Right. Right. It's not a brand name. The 12-step. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's not a brand name. And in fact, people have tried to destroy the 12-step sort of reputation in terms of establishing their own brands. Okay. Oh, that's a bunch of crap. Right. Here, let's do this. Let's do that. Okay. I'm not saying there's other pathways. There are other pathways. But anyway, the beauty of the 12 steps in general, without going through steps 1 through 12, because it takes a long time actually to understand that, is that it sort of it embodies some principles that are very helpful to the recovery process, which is what we're talking about now. For instance, that we accept what's going on. We're powerless over the person, place, or thing. So I accept that. That leads to change. The way it leads to using the 12 steps, the changes is you take which is a very standard approach to business, to psychology, is I take a moral inventory. I take an inventory of what's working in my life and what's not working in my life. Okay. So I take an inventory. If I have harmed others, including myself, I make amends for that. Okay. So if I've been self-abusive or abusive to others, if I make amends, that's the road to healing. Okay. If I take responsibility for what I've done, if I understand how I've hurt myself or another person, then I'm making an amend, and I'm trying to really change in that way. Okay. So that's the beauty of it. All right. And obviously the other part of saying about the 12 steps is it's a built-in community. It's a community you can just move into quickly and be a part of a group that can mirror for you. Now, again, if you sort of walk off the street, so to speak, and join and go to a 12-step meeting, it's going to seem very strange to you. It's almost going to seem cult-like, and a lot of people describe it that way, but it's really not. It's people trying to apply certain principles to their life, and those principles are basically embodied in what I just said: powerlessness, acceptance, and change.
Do you feel that we're just about out of time. Do you feel that one of the biggest aspects of the recovery is forgiveness, like forgiving yourself?
Yes. Yeah. Forgiveness is an extremely important emotional, spiritual healing process. All right. But you can't just say, I forgive myself, I'm okay. You have to do the work behind that, which means taking responsibility, understand the harm that you have done, okay, again, to others, to yourself, all right? Feel that, not just think that, but feel that. Empathize with others, empathize with yourself, okay? And then when you make a change, that needs to be validated in some way by another person, or to yourself. Yeah, there's a validation process that goes with that. So forgiveness as a concept is wonderful, but a lot of times it's not just, oh, I forgive you. Okay, thanks. It's this is what happened. This is what I did. This is what happened in our process. I don't see you anymore, or we lost contact with each other. I didn't realize I really miss you. I really miss what was going on between us. And I'm sorry, not just what I did to you, but what I did to us. Right?
Is that validation coming from, let's say, people at the, that are part of, let's say, the 12-step program?
Yes, that's a quick way to validate. I say quick because they've had a lot of the same experiences, okay? But, if at a personal level, validation means in terms of a relationship with somebody else that we sort of both have to acknowledge and agree about what's going on. When I say agree, not to all the details, but to the emotional part of what happened. Okay?
So many layers there. And that's, that you need to, as somebody that's recovering, that you need to unpeel, but with the help of somebody like yourself. You can't do it alone.
Yes. And there's a big lesson that we've talked about. There's a lot of things you can't do alone. Okay. Psychotherapy is a process, though, that is not a cure-all and not a do-all. Okay. But it can open you up to how do I connect to others, to a greater community? Because that's where really the healing in the long run for a lot of things is. Okay. And I'm talking not just interpersonally, but business-wise too. You can't just run a business by yourself either. You have to connect. You have to network. We talk about that all the time, right? The importance of that.
Yeah, it's critical. We're human. We're social beings. It's
that's right.
My dogs run in packs. We're animals too. We need to be connected. Ph.D.com is your website, and you can help anybody anywhere. Certainly by talking about this, I know that we're helping people, at least in the reality of what's going on, the understanding of what's going on, and giving yourself some grace in a situation.
Yes, give yourself some grace. That's right. Especially with the new year coming. Okay.
100%. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here and all your insight, and also Happy New Year too.
Happy New Year, Stephen. I will see you later.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit. And make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.